What if the preparation for the most difficult times had already begun, and the call came from Mary, silently? Perhaps you've never stopped to think about it, but what if, while the world remains distracted, profound spiritual signs are already being sent to the most attentive hearts? Signs that come not with trumpets or visible announcements, but with a gentle echo that only those who live in true devotion can hear. Have you ever felt, deep in your soul, as if something were about to happen? As if God, through Mary, were whispering a message directly to your heart? In Medjugorje, for over 4 decades, apparitions and messages have touched lives, guided conversions, and strengthened the faith of millions. But amidst all this, there lies a mystery that intrigues even the most studious: the 7 unrevealed messages. What did Mary want to say for a specific moment in history? And what's more, are we already living in the time when these messages will begin to be fulfilled? Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now may surprise you, and even change the way you view your spiritual journey. The echo of faithful hearts is not just a pretty metaphor, it is a spiritual reality. It is that silent response that wells up from within when heaven calls us to be closer to God. It is something that does not depend on external circumstances, but on an inner surrender, a fidelity that remains steadfast even when the world seems to be falling apart. And it is precisely this fidelity that Mary seeks to prepare us with to face the tribulation that is to come. Many believe that tribulation means only suffering and chaos. But in Marian messages, we understand that it is also a time of purification, awakening, and decision. It is the moment when each heart will be put to the test. Have you ever imagined preparing yourself not only to endure, but to remain at peace? When everything around you is in a storm, devotion to Mary is like a lighthouse that guides us in these turbulent waters. And understanding this now can be the difference between getting lost or remaining steadfast when trials come. In a world where news bombards us with fear, wars, divisions, and uncertainty, it may seem hard to believe that there is still a pure source of hope. But the truth is that, in every corner where devotion to Mary flourishes, something profound happens. People rediscover their faith, families are restored, and previously cold hearts begin to burn with love for God. This is the silent power of the Mother, who acts without fanfare, but with divine efficacy. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever felt that, in the midst of a difficult moment, a simple thought of Mary brought peace to your heart? The 7 unrevealed messages of Medjugorje carry a spiritual weight we cannot yet measure. However, the messages we already know show us a pattern. Mary prepares before she acts. She calls, forms, teaches, and strengthens. And when the right moment arrives, each word, each warning, each invitation to repentance comes to life within us. What many may not realize is that this preparation is not for someone out there, but for you and me, here and now. Imagine an echo that propagates not only through space, but through time. A call that originated in heaven and spans decades, reaching your heart today. An invitation to become part of this silent army of believers who are not shaken by fear, but walk guided by the light of Christ through the hands of Mary. This echo is ringing, and each of us must decide whether to ignore it or respond with all our hearts. And perhaps that's precisely why we're here today. You and I, talking about something the world doesn't yet fully understand, because when things start happening, it will be too late to begin preparing. It's now that Mary is forming the hearts that will be strong enough to endure and gentle enough to love. And in the next parts of this video, we'll dive deeper to understand how this preparation happens, and why it's vital to facing what's to come. And while we talk about this silent echo that crosses time and reaches us, I want to ask you for something that goes far beyond a simple gesture on the screen. If this topic resonates with you, if these words have somehow touched your heart or awakened something within you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far. It could be a feeling, a memory, a personal experience with Maria. I read every comment, and often it is precisely through what you share that others also find strength and comfort. When you comment, like, and subscribe, it's not just a number that increases on the channel. It's a sign that this message is alive, that it's worth continuing to produce content that inspires, strengthens, and prepares hearts for what's to come. This is how this voice, which echoes among us today, can reach others who may need to hear precisely this word. So, if you feel this conversation is important, hit that like button right now, because it helps YouTube understand that this content deserves to reach more people. And if you're not yet part of this community, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. That way, you'll always be with me in the next reflections and revelations. We'll explore it together. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this message of faith and hope. And, who knows, your simple gesture today could be the means by which another soul receives Mary's call tomorrow. Because every heart that responds strengthens the echo, and that echo cannot be stopped. Now, let's move forward together, because what we're going to delve into from here will bring us even closer to understanding the importance of this preparation for the upcoming tribulation. When I speak of the echo of faithful hearts, I'm not just talking about a pretty image or a metaphor to embellish a speech. I'm talking about something real, almost palpable, that happens within us when God's voice, through Mary, finds a heart willing to listen. This echo is not a sound that passes through the ears, but a vibration that moves the soul. It's as if every word, every sign, every divine touch is absorbed by the heart and then returned in the form of a responsa, silent response, but charged with love, obedience, and faith. The echo is proof that something has been received. It shows that the message was not lost along the way, that it was not forgotten on the surface of fleeting emotions, but rather that it sank deep enough to generate transformation. This is why it only occurs in those who live attentively, in those who cultivate inner silence and spiritual vigilance. Because Mary's voice does not compete with the noise of the world. It reveals itself to those who have learned to be silent within to hear fully. And this listening isn't passive, it's active listening, shaping decisions, changing the way we see situations, and reorganizing priorities. Those who experience this echo learn to act with more patience, discernment, and, at the same time, courage. It's as if heaven itself were training our mindset to react differently in the face of trials. And this, in itself, is preparation for tribulation. Prayer nourishes this echo. Every time we bend our knees, raise our eyes to the sky, or simply close our eyes in silence, we strengthen this internal resonance. It's as if, with each prayer, Mary's voice finds a wider space to spread within us. And, little by little, the echo becomes clearer, deeper, more meaningful. But it's not just prayer that sustains this inner sound. Silence is also essential. Not empty silence, but the silence we choose to create space for God's presence. We live surrounded by noise, news, opinions, distractions, and if we aren't intentional about creating moments of reflection, the echo weakens. Mary invites us to slow down, to filter what enters our minds, to select the voices that truly deserve space within us. Faithfulness is the third pillar of this echo. It's not enough to hear and feel once, we must remain. Remain even when heaven seems silent, even when prayer seems dry, even when answers are slow to arrive. Because it is in this remaining that the echo consolidates and becomes a sure guide. It is faithfulness that ensures that, when tribulation arrives, our first reaction is not despair, but trust. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the echo isn't just a reaction, it's also a testimony. It reveals to others that something moves us, even if they can't explain what it is. A heart that lives in tune with Mary's voice begins to emit visible signs: serenity in the face of crises, compassion in the face of conflict, strength in the face of fear. And this arouses curiosity, attracts attention, and moves those around us. It's as if the echo doesn't remain trapped within us, but overflows into the environment, influencing people and situations without us realizing it. This is the silent impact that transforms more than 1,000 speeches. Because, deep down, people aren't convinced by words alone. They are moved by living example. And when that example comes from a heart that responds to God with the same readiness Mary gave in her yes at the Annunciation, something powerful happens. It's the hidden truth that few realize. Before changing the world around us, God changes the world within us. And when this internal shift occurs, every step, every decision, every gesture carries a new intention. We no longer live on autopilot, but in the awareness that each moment can be a fertile ground for the divine plan. And, if we think about it, this is how true preparation for any tribulation is built, not by accumulating ready-made answers, but by training the heart to respond correctly to the unexpected. Perhaps this is why many fail to understand the value of cultivating this echo every day. They want to see visible miracles, grand signs, immediate interventions, but they forget that the greatest miracles begin silently, in the background of the soul, where God and Mary work together to shape who we will be when trials come knocking. And it's behind the scenes, away from the spotlight, that great transformations happen. It's there that we learn to recognize the difference between acting on impulse and acting on inspiration. It's there that we discover that true strength comes not from the absence of fear, but from the decision to trust even when fear is present. It's there that the echo is tuned, so that, at the right moment, it can sound clear and firm, guiding our every step. Because, ultimately, this echo isn't just about listening, it's about responding. And the response we give today will shape the future we'll live in. Comment below. I'm on this journey to a name that, for many, carries a spiritual weight difficult to explain. It is a small village in Bosnia and Herzegovina that, more than 4 decades ago, became a meeting point between heaven and earth. On June 24, 1981, 6 young people claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary. Since then, millions of pilgrims from all over the world have visited that place, seeking answers, consolation, and renewal of faith. And, between prayers, confessions, and masses, countless stories of transformation have been written. They're stories that changed mindsets, rebuilt families, and awakened vocations. But what makes Medjugorje so unique is not just the account of the apparitions, but the consistency and depth of the messages conveyed. Mary didn't appear once and then leave. She remained, guiding, counseling, warning, and spiritually forming all who were willing to listen. And, as the years passed, her words didn't soften to please the world. On the contrary, they remained firm, direct, unafraid to touch the spiritual wounds that humanity carries. There's something fascinating about the way these messages cross cultures and languages without losing power. Pilgrims who arrive there, even without knowing much about the history, describe feeling a profound peace, as if the very environment were permeated by a maternal presence. Many say they didn't need to hear anything to understand they were facing something greater than themselves. It's as if Medjugorje has become a vast amplifier of that spiritual echo we mentioned earlier, allowing Mary's voice to reach corners of the world that might never otherwise be reached. However, behind this light lies a mystery that keeps the hearts of thousands in suspense. The 7 unrevealed messages. Words that Mary would have entrusted to the visionaries, but which still remain hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. It's not just curiosity that drives people to think about this, but the spiritual weight these revelations are thought to carry. If the messages already revealed over the years are capable of provoking profound conversions, what will be the impact of those still hidden? This waiting creates a unique atmosphere, almost like being behind the scenes of a great event. We know something is prepared, but it hasn't yet been revealed. And, until that moment arrives, the visionary's very attitude serves as a lesson. They remain silent, remain faithful, and continue living what has already been asked. There is no public anxiety in their actions. There is trust in God's timing. And perhaps this is one of the greatest lessons we can learn from all this. Some truths are not delivered when we want them, but when we are ready to receive them. And this is precisely where the bridge between the inner echo and the messages of Medjugorje emerges. The heart trained to listen and respond is already, in a way, preparing to understand what will come, even without knowing the details. Because the unrevealed message is not just information, it is a call to transformation. And those who are not spiritually awakened may not recognize its value when it is revealed. There's an intriguing aspect to all this. Throughout history, God has always chosen specific moments to reveal hidden truths, whether through prophets, apostles, or Marian messages. And almost always, before the revelation came, there was a time of preparation, purification, and change of mind. Medjugorje seems to follow this same pattern, a long period of instructions, warnings, and counsel, preparing a faithful people for something that could have not only individual but global impact. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the anticipation of these 7 messages touches something essential in human beings, the need for meaning and direction. When we know there's a word waiting for the right moment to be spoken, our attention sharpens, our perception sharpens. It's like walking down a road knowing that, at some point, there will be a milestone that will change everything. We don't know when, but we feel that each step brings us closer. And it's in this journey, in this silent process, that the heart learns to live with more purpose, without getting lost in anxiety. This journey of waiting shapes more than the revelation itself. It teaches patience, perseverance, and, above all, trust. It teaches that not every truth needs to be spoken immediately, and that spiritual maturity often comes from the ability to sustain faith even without all the answers. And when we look at Medjugorje from this perspective, we realize that perhaps the greatest miracle there is not just what Mary said, but what remains to be said. Comment. This makes sense to me. Living in preparation doesn't mean being constantly on high alert, like someone expecting something bad to happen at any moment. On the contrary, it means cultivating a serene and firm posture, knowing that every small gesture of faith is part of a larger construction. Devotion to Mary, when understood in its depth, isn't limited to reciting beautiful prayers or participating in moments of piety. It is a daily school of spiritual fortitude. It's like gradually donning an invisible armor, the armor of faith, that is adjusted and strengthened with each act of surrender, each renunciation of sin, each conscious choice to remain faithful even when it would be easier to give in. This preparation isn't theoretical. It shapes concrete attitudes and redefines priorities. When someone truly lives in preparation, they begin to look at the world with a more attentive eye, noticing signs that would otherwise go unnoticed. It's like walking down a dark path holding a torch. The light doesn't illuminate the entire path at once, but rather shows the next step. And yet, safety isn't in how much you see, but in the confidence that the light is enough to guide you. Mary, as mother, does not call us to devotion, devoid of meaning. She invites us to a living relationship where each prayer is a silent training, and each act of love is a piece of our preparation. She teaches us to keep our hearts burning like a lamp in the midst of a storm, not only to illuminate our own path, but also so that others may find direction. There's a hidden truth in this process. Preparation isn't built in moments of crisis, but before them, those who wait for the battle to begin, forging their armor risk being vulnerable when they need protection most. It's in ordinary days, in discrete decisions, that inner resilience is formed. It's there, away from the spotlight, that the soul learns to choose truth, even when no one is looking, and to reject the shadows, even when they seem to offer temporary relief. And this preparation requires a change of mindset. It's not living in fear of tribulation, but with the awareness that it is part of a greater journey. It's understanding that God prepares us not only to endure, but to be light in the midst of darkness, living witnesses of hope when everything around us seems to be crumbling. Mary trains us to be bearers of this light, so that love is not suffocated by fear, and faith is not weakened by suffering. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because living in preparation also means accepting that our journey will have moments of renunciation. It means letting go of habits that weaken us spiritually, cutting ties with what separates us from God, and investing time in what builds the soul. It's a silent construction, but one that bears visible fruits: peace amidst chaos, discernment in making decisions, and the courage to remain steadfast even when everything seems uncertain. This preparation is often misunderstood by those observing us from the outside. Some may consider it an exaggeration, others may interpret it as fanaticism. But those who have experienced the power of this inner life know that there is no exaggeration in preparing to keep faith intact in the face of any scenario. It's like a soldier who trains every day, even in times of peace, because he knows that war doesn't warn when it will come. And it is in this constant practice that devotion to Mary becomes not just a refuge, but a training ground. Every rosary prayed, every fast offered, every act of forgiveness, and every gesture of charity is like sharpening a sword or strengthening a shield. It's not a waste of time. It's an investment in what truly matters. And when darkness approaches, this light we cultivate today will be the beacon that keeps us on the right path. Comment here: I'm on this journey too. When we speak of tribulations, it's natural for many minds to rush to dramatic images, chaotic scenes, or grandiose events that grab the headlines. But in Marian messages, the tone is different. It's not about stoking fear, but about awakening the heart to understand that, amidst apparent normalcy, there are already signs demanding our attention. Mary's warnings aren't thunderous alarms that suddenly arise. They're more like a distant bell that begins to ring, soft but constant. For those with attentive ears, among what has already been revealed are warnings about the loss of faith in many hearts, about people's distancing themselves from God due to materialism and selfishness, about families falling apart because they no longer place love and forgiveness at the center. She speaks of a time when many will exchange truth for convenience, and fidelity will be seen as an obstacle to a free life, a distorted concept of freedom that imprisons rather than liberates. These signs are not distant fiction, nor vague prediction. They can already be perceived now. Just look around: the trivialization of evil, the indifference to the suffering of others, the ease with which lies are told or reality is distorted for personal gain. It is as if humanity is learning to live with darkness and calling it light. Mary warns us not to become accustomed to what wounds God's heart, because that is the quietest and most dangerous path with your perdition. There are also warnings about the excessive pursuit of power and control, which generates divisions and wars, not only between nations, but also within families and communities. She reminds us that the greatest battle begins in the human heart, and that the lack of reconciliation is one of the greatest spiritual poisons of our time. Forgiveness, so often repeated in her messages, is not only a beautiful virtue, but a key to breaking the invisible chains that bind us to the past and prevent us from advancing on our journey of conversion. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the tribulations that have already been revealed speak not only of external crises, but of an internal process that each person will face. Tribulation is not only the collapse of the world's structures, but the moment when our own internal structures are shaken. It is when life confronts us with decisions that define who we truly are. In these moments, the armor of faith we spoke of earlier becomes more than necessary. It becomes the dividing line between failure and perseverance. Mary's messages reveal that these times will also be fertile ground for miracles of transformation. Amidst suffering and confusion, many will rediscover their faith. Others will discover, for the first time, the meaning of living according to God's will. But to do so, we must be awake and ready to recognize the voice of heaven, even when the noise of the world tries to drown it out. And here lies a hidden truth that few realize. Tribulations do not come to destroy those who trust in God, but to purify them. Just as gold is purified in fire, faith is strengthened in the face of difficulties. Those who are anchored in prayer, fidelity, and devotion to Mary will not only endure, but will be able to help others through the storm. The present moment is a time for spiritual decision. It is not a time to postpone necessary changes, nor to wait for a more favorable day. Every choice we make today is shaping the kind of person we will be when trials come. And Mary, in her messages, reminds us that there is no neutrality in this process. Either we move toward the light, or we are dragged by the darkness. Comment. This makes sense to me. Devotion to Mary, when lived authentically, is much more then a set of repeated prayers. It is a path of inner formation, a continuous process that molds the heart so that it not only bears the weight of trials, but also remains firm and luminous in the face of them. Each devotional practice, however simple it may seem, serves as a cornerstone placed at the foundation of this inner fortress. It's not about the number of rituals, but the quality of dedication. The daily rosary, for example, is one of those pillars that sustain the spiritual life. Many see it as a long, repetitive prayer, but they fail to realize that, in the repetition of the Hail Marys, there lies a secret. It's as if each bead were a step taken in the garden of the soul, where Mary's presence cleanses, heals, and reorders thoughts and emotions. It is in the rhythm of this prayer that the heart learns to silence its anxieties and fix its eyes on Jesus, contemplating each mystery with the serenity of one who trusts in the divine plan. The Rosary not only brings us closer to Mary, but also accustoms us to breathing the rhythm of heaven. Another practice that shapes resilient hearts is consecration. Surrendering oneself to Mary is not giving up one's freedom, but placing it in the hands of those who know how to use it better than we do. It's a decision that requires courage, because it means allowing every area of life choices, relationships, plans, and even suffering to be touched and shaped by God's will. Those who consecrate themselves do not walk alone. They live with the certainty that they are under the attentive and loving gaze of the Mother, who guides each step with patience and firmness. It is a silent but powerful pact that strengthens us when the world tries to drag us away from our purpose. Fasting, often misunderstood, is another treasure of this devotion. It's not just about depriving the body of food, but about training the will to say no to itself. It's a discipline that disarms vanity, weakens attachments, and opens space for God's grace to act more freely. Mary always recommends fasting as a spiritual weapon, not to punish us, but to free us from what weakens us within. It sharpens the sensitivity of the heart, making us more attentive to God's signs and less vulnerable to the distractions the enemy scatters along the way. I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the true power of these practices lies not only in the act itself, but in the mindset they build. Those who pray the Rosary daily learn constancy. Those who consecrate themselves learn surrender. Those who fast learn self-control. And these three virtues, constancy, surrender, and mastery, are like three keys that open doors of spiritual endurance that no tribulation can break down. It is in this silent process that the heart stops reacting impulsively and begins to respond with conviction. When we sincerely practice these practices, we begin to notice subtle yet profound changes. Patience becomes more present, hope more solid, and trust more natural. Everyday challenges no longer steal our peace as easily, and pain no longer turns into despair so quickly. It's as if, without realizing it, we are accumulating reserves of inner strength for the moment when they will truly be needed. And this strength is not meant to shield us from feeling, but to keep us standing while we feel. Mary doesn't prepare us to be insensitive to difficulties, but to overcome them without losing our essence. A resilient heart is not made of stone. It is made of flesh, but rooted in something greater than itself. This is why Marian devotion doesn't make us fragile dependents, but spiritual warriors who know who they belong to and where they are going. Comment here. I'm on this journey to silence is one of heaven's most profound languages. It is not absence, it is not emptiness, and much less a sign of inactivity. On the contrary, silence is a space where God and Mary work invisibly but extremely effectively. Those who do not learn to value spiritual silence risk getting lost in the confusion of the world's voices, always seeking quick answers, obvious signs, or immediate confirmations. But the truth is that not every call comes in audible words. Often, it manifests as a gentle restlessness, an unexpected peace, or a discreet impulse to change something in one's life. Mary acts very much like this. She doesn't impose, she doesn't force, she doesn't interrupt our freedom with noise. Her presence is like the light of dawn, gradually dispelling the darkness, quietly, but with enough force to transform the entire landscape. But to perceive this light, one must slow down and create within oneself a space free from constant noise, but also internal noise, made up of anxious thoughts, fears, and distractions. The silence that Mary invites us to experience is not an end in itself, but a means to practice listening. A listening that goes beyond what the ears perceive, reaching what the heart can feel. In this space, the most important truths arrive, not as ready-made speeches, but as seeds. And seeds don't germinate immediately. They require time, patience, and care. This is why many fail to understand the value of this type of listening, because they live trapped in a mindset of the immediate, where everything must happen immediately, without waiting. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because I believe this silence and attentive listening have everything to do with the unrevealed messages of Medjugorje. It's not difficult to imagine that part of this waiting is precisely so that hearts are ready when the words are announced. A revelation delivered to an unprepared heart can become just another forgotten piece of information. But when the heart is already trained to listen and receive, the revelation itself transforms into strength, direction, and life. Silence, in this sense, is like the backstage where great works are prepared before being presented to the world. Nothing happens by chance. Perhaps, while many wonder what is in the 7 messages, Mary is, little by little, shaping those who will hear them so that they not only understand the content, but live by it. This requires a maturity that cannot be rushed. It is in this quiet environment that the most impactful decisions of spiritual life arise. When there is no rush to fill every minute with stimuli, we can identify the right direction amidst so many options. We can perceive that the hidden truth, the one that has not yet fully revealed itself, is not something we should passively await, but something we must prepare the ground to receive. And this preparation is done in secret, where no one applauds, but where heaven watches attentively. Attentive listening also protects us. It creates a natural filter against the deceptive voices that, in times of tribulation, will try to pose as light. Those accustomed to listening to Mary in silence know how to distinguish when something truly comes from her, or when it is merely noise disguised as revelation. This discernment can be the difference between staying on the path or being dragged down dangerous shortcuts. And the curious thing is that the more we get used to this silence, the more we realize it's not empty. It's full of subtle presences, small signs, and internal movements that confirm we're not alone. It's like a wordless conversation, where the response is a feeling of security, relief in the midst of uncertainty, or new courage to face what seemed impossible. Right there. This makes sense to me. The mystery of the 7 messages of Medjugorje is like a closed book that everyone knows exists, but no one has yet been allowed to open. This very idea arouses intense, almost instinctive curiosity. After all, if Mary, over so many years, shared such clear advice, warnings, and requests, what could she have reserved for a specific moment? Are these messages stern warnings about difficult times to come? Are they profound counsel to guide the church and the faithful in the face of a global spiritual crisis? Or perhaps revelations about the future of humanity, so delicate that they can only be spoken when the world is spiritually ready to hear them? The most intriguing thing is to think that these messages already exist, are already complete, have already been heard by the seers, but have not reached us. This wait, in itself, is a lesson. Because in a world where everything is instantaneous and information travels at the speed of a screen tap, the existence of a secret preserved for decades reminds us that not every truth can or should be revealed ahead of time. It's as if heaven is telling us, you must mature before receiving this word. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because perhaps the mystery lies not only in the content of the messages, but in the process of preparation they provoke. It's like when we know an important change is about to happen and, even without all the details, we begin to prepare ourselves. In this case, the preparation is not physical, but spiritual. It requires conversion, repentance, strengthening of faith, and abandoning the illusions that bind us to what is fleeting. The silence surrounding these messages doesn't mean nothing is happening. On the contrary, the silence itself may be part of the revelation. A time when each of us is called to reflect on what our reaction would be if these words were revealed today. Would we be ready to obey? Would we have the courage to change whatever needed to be changed? Or would we be paralyzed by fear or disbelief? There's also the possibility that the 7 messages contain not just warnings, but promises. Mary, in all her appearances, always balanced the firmness of her warnings with the tenderness of her hope. Even when speaking of times of tribulation, she always pointed to the final victory, to the light that would come after the darkness. So perhaps part of these messages is about the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, about a spiritual renewal so profound that it will transform the face of the earth. But until they are revealed, we remain in this space between mystery and expectation. And this space is valuable. It keeps our attention focused upward, reminding us that history is not in the hands of chance, but in the hands of God. It is as if heaven keeps us vigilant, lest we fall into the distraction that lulls the soul to sleep. Because, on the day these messages are announced, there will be no time to begin preparing. The time to prepare is now, right there. I'm on this journey to over the years. Real stories inspired by the lives of ordinary people have shown that when a heart decides to heed Mary's call, something changes so profoundly that even outsiders can sense it. It's as if a new force begins to inhabit that person, a silent but constant light that begins to influence every gesture, every word, every decision. And the most impressive thing is that, often, this transformation doesn't happen because of a spectacular miracle or an extraordinary moment, but in everyday life, in the discrete choices that shape character and rekindle faith. One of the testimonies that most impacted me was that of a woman who, after years of living far from God, decided to start praying the rosary every day. At first, she said she didn't know if she could maintain the practice, but over time, she realized that this constant prayer not only calmed her mind but also gave her clarity to deal with situations that previously left her feeling lost. The change was so noticeable that her family members began to take an interest in faith again, simply by seeing her renewed serenity and patience. Another example is that of a young man who, in the midst of a personal crisis, decided to make a total consecration to Mary. He described his life as a boat adrift, but from the moment he handed over control to her, he began to feel that the right opportunities appeared at the right time. It wasn't an instant transformation, but a process in which confidence grew day by day. He himself said that, before, he was afraid of trials, but that now, even in difficult moments, he felt an inexplicable peace if he knew he wasn't alone in this journey. And there are also stories of people who, through fasting and prayer, were able to free themselves from addictions and destructive patterns that seemed impossible to break. One man shared that he began by offering a simple fast, simply as a spiritual discipline, but that, without realizing it, this act strengthened his will until he was able to abandon habits that separated him from God and his family. He said it wasn't his own strength, but something that came from outside, as if Mary were supporting his decision at every step. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because these testimonies aren't just pretty stories meant to inspire. They're concrete signs that responding to Mary's call has a real impact. They show that devotion isn't a refuge from problems, but a school for learning to face them with a different mindset. The change isn't just internal, but spills outward, influencing the environment, touching people, and lighting flames in hearts that were almost extinguished. What strikes me most is that these stories prove something we often forget. Mary's call is not reserved for perfect or very holy people. It is for everyone, especially those who feel weak, tired, or lost. And it is precisely in these hearts that she brings about the greatest transformations, because they don't trust in their own strength, but allow themselves to be shaped. When we look at these testimonies, we realize that, deep down, each response to the call is like a small piece in a large mosaic. It may not seem grand on its own, but when joined with so many others, it reveals a work that only heaven could have planned. And that's what makes each believer's journey so important. No matter how small the step, it always contributes to the greater purpose. Comment. This makes sense to me. Preparing yourself spiritually for the unknown is an exercise in trust, and perhaps that's precisely where one of the greatest challenges of a life of faith lies, because it's not about organizing every detail based on what we already know, but about creating an inner structure so solid that even without knowing every step ahead, we can walk with confidence. It's like crossing a foggy road. You can't see the end, but you know you're going in the right direction because you recognize who's guiding you. Constant prayer is the first pillar of this preparation. I'm not talking about praying only when there's time or when your heart is at peace, but about cultivating a daily, lively, and sincere conversation with God. Through Mary, it is through this practice that the faithful find clarity for decisions, strength to resist temptation, and serenity to face moments of uncertainty. Prayer is like a thread that keeps the heart connected to heaven, and the stronger it is, the harder it will be to break that connection in times of trial. Spiritual vigilance comes next, and it doesn't mean living in distrust of everything, but keeping our senses alert to notice when something begins to divert our heart from the path. This requires self-knowledge and sincerity in recognizing our own weaknesses. Mary always warns about the need for vigilance, because she knows that many falls begin subtly, when we let our guard down in the face of small distractions or commitments. Two things that don't lead us to God. Another essential point is communion with the church. We live in times when many try to walk alone in faith, but experience shows that this leaves us vulnerable. Community life, the sacraments, listening to the word, and active participation in the church's mission are not just religious practices. They anchor us in truth, strengthen us, and remind us that the journey is not solitary. Mary, in her messages, always points to Christ, and Christ left us the church as a place of encounter and nourishment for the soul. The works of mercy complete this preparation because they remove us from our center and place us in service, helping others, comforting those who suffer, visiting those who are alone. Offering what we have. All of this is not just kindness, it is training for love, and love is the strength that overcomes any tribulation. A heart accustomed to service does not lose itself in the face of pain. It knows how to transform suffering into offering, and fragility into surrender. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because preparing for the unknown is, at its core, preparing to not depend on circumstances. It's shaping a mindset that remains steadfast when everything around us changes. This means not clinging to what is unstable opinion, status, possessions, and learning to ground your life in what is eternal. This shift in perspective is liberating. When hope is rooted in heaven, no storm can uproot it. This silent preparation, made of prayer, vigilance, communion, and service, is like building a house on rock. And the beauty of it is that, even though the 7 messages of Medjugorje bring harsh warnings, those who already live this way will not be surprised by being unprepared. Because true readiness doesn't begin when we hear the news. It begins much earlier, in the daily routine, in the small choices, in the silent sacrifices, and in the actions that no one sees. But that heavenrecords.comment here, I'm on this journey to hope, is one of the most underrated weapons we have. And perhaps that's precisely why the enemy tries to steal it at any cost. In times of uncertainty, when the dark clouds of tribulation seem to be gathering, the natural tendency of the human heart is to shrink, to allow itself to be overcome by fear or the feeling that there is no way out. But this is where devotion to Mary reminds us of something essential. Tribulation is not the end, and never will be, for those who keep their eyes fixed on Christ. It is, in fact, a path difficult, yes, but capable of leading us to a victory far greater than any momentary defeat could suggest. Mary, in all her appearances, never ceased to point to the light, even while warning of difficult times. Her message is always clear: where there is true love, darkness cannot prevail. That is why she does not call us to hide or flee, but to clothe ourselves with courage and hope. This hope is not a fleeting emotion. It does not depend on what we see or feel. It is born of an inner certainty that God has already won and that our history, however turbulent, is being guided by His hands. When we look at the accounts of tribulation from this perspective, everything changes. Fear loses its power because we stop seeing suffering as punishment and begin to see it as part of a process of purification. Difficulties become opportunities to mature, and even tears take on new meaning because we know we are not going through anything alone. Mary walks with us, leading us to the heart of her Son, and it is there that we find the peace the world cannot give. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because hope, when it's genuine, not only sustains us, but also drives us to action. It lifts us out of the paralysis that fear provokes and reminds us that there's still something to do, that there are still people to love, wounds to heal, bridges to rebuild. Hope allows us to see beyond the present moment, like someone who walks through the night, confident that dawn will come. And there's an important detail. This hope isn't naivete. It's not closing our eyes to reality or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. On the contrary, it's facing difficulties head-on, but without allowing them to define our destiny. It's choosing to believe that, even when the situation is unfavorable, God is writing something we can't yet fully see. It's like being backstage at a play and hearing the sound of preparation before the show begins. We know something big is being built, even if we can't yet see the stage set. This mindset transforms the way we experience the present. Instead of being consumed by anxiety about what will happen, we begin to ask ourselves, how can I remain faithful today? This shift in focus removes the weight of tomorrow and places our hearts in the here and now, which is the only space where we can truly act. And every act of faithfulness, no matter how small, is a seed of hope sown in the soil of eternity. Mary teaches us that while fear paralyzes, hope builds. She is like a lighthouse that amidst the storm remains lit, reminding sailors that safe harbor is near. And this is how we must live, not only keeping this light to ourselves, but sharing it so that others may also find direction. Because when hope spreads, it creates resistance against darkness and opens space for the victory of love to be visible, even amidst chaos. Comment. This makes sense to me. The echo of your heart may be the answer heaven awaits. And perhaps, this is the most beautiful part of everything we've discussed so far. Realizing that, in the midst of such a noisy world, God still has voices willing to respond. It doesn't matter how long your story is or how far you've come. What truly matters is the decision to make room for Mary to mold in you a ready heart, capable of listening and obeying, even when the path is still shrouded in the mist of the unknown. This preparation doesn't happen in grand, isolated gestures, but in the details that repeat themselves every day, in the prayer you never fail to say, in the forgiveness you offer, even without being asked, in the fast you observe in silence, in the time you dedicate to helping someone without expecting anything in return. It's these seemingly small choices that build a strong heart, a heart that remains faithful when trials come. And here is a truth few realize. Tribulation, however harsh, has no power to dim the brightness of a heart that lives in hope and trust. Mary does not call us to a path of fear, but to a path of victory. She knows that, in the end, love always conquers darkness, and that every response we make, even the simplest, contributes to making this victory visible and felt. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this response heaven expects from you isn't just for your personal benefit. When you choose to live faithfully, your life becomes a beacon for others. Your testimony, even if silent, can be the reason someone returns to God, finds meaning in the midst of pain, or discovers the strength to move forward. This is how the echo multiplies. It begins in your heart, but reverberates in places you may never know. And if there's one thing the messages of Medjugorje make clear, it's that no one is too small to be an instrument of this work. Every yes we give to God, every opening we make for Mary to act, carries eternal weight. So don't wait for the perfect moment to begin. Don't expect to have everything under control or to know exactly what will happen. Preparation begins now, right where you are, with what you have, and as you are. The call has been made. The question is, what will your response be? Comment here. I'm on this journey too. If you've made it this far, it's because this message found a place in your heart, and that already means a lot. So, if this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel to continue walking with me on this journey. Here we delve into topics that truly help strengthen faith and prepare spiritually. Take advantage and leave the phrase "I'm with you" until the end in the comments, so I know you were with me until the very end. And if this video brought you peace, clarity, or renewed your hope, please also leave a like, because that's how I realize we're on the right path together. There's a video here that complements this topic and will further expand on what we discussed today. Click and continue with me there.